Hello and welcome to ECE 220 Curriculum Methods and Techniques. We are on week 5. So this week our objectives are to identify the factors that affect the planning of early childhood curriculum, identify the characteristics of developmentally and culturally appropriate learning experiences for all children ages birth to 8, identify developmentally appropriate child outcomes, select developmentally appropriate activities that promote identified child learning outcomes, and practice evidence-based instructional support strategies to carry out learning activities. So this week we are focusing on communication curriculum, and really communication curriculum is important in understanding the world and functioning within it, because communication curriculum includes the following: language, literacy, and literature. And we're going to talk a little bit about each of these 3 types of communication curriculums, starting with language. So, what is language? Language is a complex rule-governed system of symbols that allows the communication of an infinite number of ideas. Language can be verbal or nonverbal, and language really starts at birth. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're born in, where you're from. Everyone is born with the ability to learn language, and learning language is essential for success in school. We also know that there are certain milestones for language, but again, just like with every type of development, it's really important to note that children develop on their own timetable, and we have to respect that. I would like you to take a minute to refer back to Chapter 7 in the text. What are the 3 different theories of language? Which one do you believe to be true? i.e., how is it that you believe young children learn language? The theories of language development that you will see in the text are behaviorist, nativist, and social interactionist perspective. So go ahead and make sure that you take a look at those 3 theories of language and that you understand them and know which one you believe to be true. So, we're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like in a classroom to provide language experiences to young children. So, I want to talk about these things that are on the slide. So, contact talk versus task talk is something that I see in classrooms, at least the task talk, pretty heavily. So, task talk is essentially when we are giving directives to children. And sometimes we have to do that, like sit down, it's time to eat lunch, or it's time to watch hands. But I see a lot of times in early childhood classrooms where task talk is the majority of the talk that is occurring. Contact talk is the talk that is a little more personable and really builds towards emotional support and relationship building. So that's the talk that's things like, how was your weekend? What did you do? What is this a picture of? So this is that language that you're asking to get to know the child. Another strategy that we use to provide children with experience with language is asking who, why, where, when, and what questions. So this is a part of cognition and cognitive development. So we should be asking children these questions. We should be waiting for their responses. We should be providing wait time. So that means pausing before responding. And we should be trying to engage children in feedback loops. So that is that back and forth conversation that happens. Another thing that we can do is provide advanced vocabulary for children. So we should label things in classrooms. The other thing that we should do is we shouldn't shy away from using big words like, I'm trying to think of a good one. Archaeologist or paleontologist. So those are all things words that we should not shy away from using because we're scared that children won't understand them. The last thing that we do in early childhood classrooms is that we have conversations with children. We make sure that we are giving them, are participating in feedback loops, and also sometimes that can be called as serve and return as well. This is a short video on language development that I'm actually going to include inside of the content for this week. But if you would like to take a look at it now, you can. If not, please look for it in the content this week. So I've just given you some strategies that you could work on to develop language. We're going to talk about some activities that you can provide children with to support with language. The first one are word games. So this can be a multitude of things. This can be rhyming games that you're using with children. This could be playing something like bingo. The textbook actually has a ton of stuff in there in regards to word games. You could do interactive storybook reading. So sometimes this is called dialogic reading, and this is a way of reading books where children are actually engaged and you're actually following their lead. You're talking about the pictures on the page. You're using voices when you're reading. So this is really getting children involved. Storytelling is another thing. So that's like telling the story of the Three Little Bears or Little Red Riding Hood. And singing is another way to promote language in early childhood classrooms. So we're going to move on now to literacy curriculum. So literacy is really the ability to read and write and make meaning of writing. In early childhood settings, this really just means that you're including opportunities to play with print, independently read books for pleasure, and play with writing materials in ways that are enjoyable and that make sense to young children. Literacy also begins at birth, and it's tied to language development. And really what literacy is really all about is just skill building. So you're helping children build upon skills that they start with language, and it turns into what we would call literacy skills. So some early literacy skills that you would see in an early childhood classroom include oral language. This is spoken word, but in terms of literacy, it's when it's connected to reading and writing. Vocabulary. Research suggests that children with larger vocabularies are better able to decode words when they're learning to read because they have more words to pull from. Phonological awareness, this is the ability to recognize that spoken language is composed of smaller units of sound. It moves from big to increasingly complex. And really what you're looking at here is phonemic awareness, and this is something that children learn through rhyming and chants. So you can almost think about it as the breaking down of syllables. Additionally, there's alphabet knowledge. So this is just really, do they recognize their ABCs? Are they recognizing sounds and connecting them to their ABCs? And then understanding of print, which is the ability to understand how printed letters, words, and books work, and to know that print has meaning. Some ways that you could provide experiences with literacy in an early childhood classroom are making sure that you have a print-rich environment. And that really just means that literacy be integrated into the classroom at all levels. And you can do this by doing things like classroom labels, having a letter written out every day for the children that you read, making sure that you have plenty of books and writing materials at every center. It's actually a NAEYC thing to include books and writing materials at every center. So if any of you guys are familiar with NAEYC accreditation, you are probably working in classrooms where there are writing materials and books at every single center in your classroom. Some activities that you can do in regards to literacy are making sure that you have lots of charts and posters in your classroom, that you're reading stories, and we've already talked about dialogic reading, that you are dictating children's writing. So this is when they are drawing a picture and you are writing down what they are describing about the picture, creating classroom books, talking about recipes, and just participating in various writing activities that can be structured, but also they just need to be unstructured. There needs to be some freedom in what it is that they do. So let's move on to literature curriculum. So we know that books are the tools that teachers use to do their job. They build language, they give teachers access and children access to things in the natural and social world. They help children better understand themselves and other people. They can teach values. They provide time to reflect and give thinking, gives children control and pleasure and experiences with beauty. They also teach a love of reading. So here are some ways that you could provide experiences with literature in an early childhood classroom. Make sure that you understand the different genres, fiction, informational books, mood and concept books, and understand the criteria for choosing children's literature, which there is some criteria in your text. And make sure that you're incorporating experiences with literature into the daily schedule. So some literature activities that you can include in your classroom are reading to children either individually or in a group, making sure that you are including oral stories so that you're providing children with puppets and flannel boards, making sure you're allowing children the opportunity to act out stories, and also the use of stories that are pre-recorded is another great literature activity. This video is a short video on what dialogic reading looks like, and again, I will put it into this week's content, and you can watch it there. I just like to point out this website because I think it's a good website, but Unite for Literacy is an online resource of books, and it's free. And if you go on there, there's a ton of books that you can use as an early childhood educator. It's also a great website to tell parents about because they can use it in their homes. So we're going to try to put this all together about what language, literacy, and literature curriculum looks like in a classroom. So what are some traditional centers or areas in an early childhood classroom that support language, literacy, and literature? So first are writing centers. So how many of you guys have writing centers in your classroom? What are the things that you are keeping in writing centers in your classroom? And how does this promote language, literacy, and literature? If you take a look at some of the things that are on the shelves, there's plenty of writing materials, paper, it looks like some stamps or molds right down here. Here there's books, and there is lots of paper that's available too, markers, I see some whiteboards, a keyboard as well. So it's just the ability to provide children with lots of materials so that they can practice writing. The library area obviously is a go-to, so you should make sure that you have lots of books in your library. If you notice, this library also has a very print-rich environment. This one does as well. Library is labeled. They also have a listening center over here. Looks like puppets in a basket. Over here there is a flannel board. This area looks really inviting, and if you still look, there are still writing materials in this library. Dramatic play is another area where you can really incorporate communication curriculum, and not just because it's a good platform for language development, especially talking about like advanced vocabulary and participating in feedback loops, participating in contact talk, but also if you look here, there's a ton of print-rich environment opportunities to create print-rich environments inside of dramatic play areas. So I want you to spend a few minutes thinking about your classroom floor plan and materials list. Think about what you could add and how can you incorporate the information from this screencast into your integrated unit of study. Thanks.